Lancashire Police are now patrolling the fracking site on the Fylde around the clock, and they've drafted in colleagues from other forces to help them to do it. The area's Police and Crime Commissioner estimates the force is now spending £450,000 a month on the operation, and up to 80 officers a day are being deployed at the site. Clive Grunshaw has been speaking to our reporter Holly Jones.
With the increased activity, and the activity, it's not just the numbers, it's the increase in terms of the hours involved, you know, the activity that's going on throughout the day. So the police now have to be on site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so that puts additional strain on the resource. And of course, because of the abstraction of officers, and we have between 50 and 80 officers per day that are working on the Preston New Road site at the moment. That means that work that they would normally do is not being done, it's not being delivered. And part of the reason for that is because of the increase in activity just recently, and this the Reclaim the Power that have launched a month of activity on the site, people that are essentially professional protesters, and the disruption that is causing, that we are now in a position where we have had to call in mutual aid. Officers come in to support the work of Lancashire Police officers coming in from North Wales, Merseyside and Cumbria, who can assist. Now, we didn't want that to be the case. We wanted to have just Lancashire officers, because one of the arguments that I have used is that these are officers who live and work within the local community. But the intensity is such and the pressure is such that we do need that additional support from outside.
And you're saying there you're bringing in forces from other areas like Cumbria and Merseyside. Is this not just going to have a domino effect on their forces as well? Well,
I'm sure that it will, because of course all forces have a difficult situation with the courts, but at the moment we are under such pressure that at least for the time being, and we'll make judgments going forward whether that changes, but for the time being we need the additional support.
And you're saying you're putting aside that 450,000, is it, to police the fracking site? Is that including the money that it's going to cost to bring these extra officers in?
No. I mean, the £450,000 was what was budgeted for the situation as it was. That was before mutual aid. So we're bringing in officers from other forces. That's an additional cost.
What would you say to the protesters that are arguing that they're doing this because they're seeing increasing police aggression towards them?
I don't think there's in terms of the aggression, that's not coming from the police officers. The police officers have been the restraint that I've seen, I think, has been remarkable, and I do think it takes its toll over time. I think the reputation of Lancashire police officers and the way they have conducted themselves has been greatly enhanced by the work that is done. I think tension has increased, but not necessarily with the police officers. I think it's the activity, because I think that the protesters, in terms of some of the more professional protesters that are coming in from outside, they go beyond the activity that the local protesters would normally, how they would normally behave. It's a really difficult situation for the police to be caught up in. So I don't think necessarily an increase in aggression. I think it's an increase in tension because of the level of activity.
And you're saying that tension there, you work alongside these officers and you meet these officers that are there every day. What effect is it having on them?
I think, like I said, it takes its toll, because over time, you know, some officers are working really long shifts, up to 15 hours per day, working on the site. And at the moment, because of the number of protesters there, they can be working and being abused, and there is real serious abuse that takes place in the face of police officers in a way that they're trying to get a reaction. You know, I think what has been difficult is the way that the police have been portrayed sometimes as the enemy by the protesters, and that is absolutely not the case. The police are not there to be the enemy. They are there to do their job. which, like I said, is caught in the middle here. You know, so they've got a job to do. They are not the enemy of Cuadrilla. They are not the enemy of the protesters. They've got to facilitate both. But certainly that is the way that they are being treated, and the way that sometimes the abuse that they get. And I think that's difficult, because no one goes to work every day to face that kind of abuse. But like I said, we just want to get through and get back to a situation which is more normalised. But at the end of it, you know, we are still picking up the pieces. You know, we've got a reputation, that relationship with the community that needs to be maintained, and we've got a cost to ourselves, to the service, you know, a burden to the taxpayers of Lancashire, and that's unfair as well. And so we need that situation resolving with government, and we will continue in our job, in my job, to make sure they understand the decision they're taking and actually the consequences that we're facing with that.
Police and Crime Commissioner Clive Grunshaw there speaking to Holly Jones. And as you heard in that interview, a national protest group, Reclaim the Power, is currently staging what it describes as a month of action at the fracking site in Little Plumpton. Earlier, our political correspondent Paul Faulkner was joined here in the studio by Tina Rothery from Reclaim the Power.
Tina, welcome to the studio. Thanks very much for joining me. Now, you're a well-known face locally of the anti-fracking campaign, one of the self-styled Lancashire nanas. So just explain to me briefly your involvement with Reclaim the Power.
Well, I've been involved in fighting fracking for 6 years now, and I first encountered Reclaim the Power in Balcombe in 2012. And great people, I think it's easy to get confused with organisations and businesses and corporations. We're nothing like that in the activist world. It's just basically residents from different parts of the country who have volunteered to come and help us the same way they help people in Balcombe. You know, in the same way that I've gone forth. I mean, the Nanas aren't some great big organisation, and yet we go and we help other camps and other areas where they're having protests as well. It's a solidarity amongst people who've realised fracking is dangerous for our community. We're protecting the kids wherever the kids are.
Sometimes, though, our cameras have witnessed local protesters trying to draw a line between themselves and what they describe as national protesters in terms of the kind of action that either side is prepared to take, although you're both on the same side, as you rightly say. How come you're now so overtly aligning yourself with a national group? I
mean, personally, I've always seen that join up anyway, but I think for a lot of the early days, like 6 months ago when we started at Preston New Road on January 5th, when the Cuadrilla came, was a lot of local residents really did still have faith that because we had said no in our county, that you could stand and you could have your protest and it would stop, that there must be still something we hadn't yet tried. And for those people were far more adverse to linking up with, you know, proper direct actions that would eventually come into play. And in the early days we didn't. We slow walked the vehicles, we did, you know, mainly banner protests, getting beeps from cars. And then, and it's not just Reclaim the Power that bring direct action. If you remember in the early days, other protesters too were trying to stop the trucks by either getting on the trucks or doing lock-ons or sit-ins. So all of this stuff has always gone on. I'm not quite sure why there's more. Maybe it's just because at the moment Reclaim the Power have really helped by unifying the residents groups and helping us to plan out our months so that, you know, we're doing something every single day that will impact this industry.
Do you feel that the local tactics have changed, or are you just more willing to countenance direct action by others from outside of the area?
I think the saddest thing is, I mean, I've not actually ever done a lock-on or sat on a truck, and yeah, I've been in this for 6 years. But yeah, I'm getting to that point where I'm considering what I will do, because once you've worn out democracy and you've tested every part of it, and you've run out of petitions to sign and you know, ways to object to planning, and you've lobbied your MP, you've done everything humanly possible, and you've run out of options now. You know, we won. We had planning rejected for this area, and yet here we are fighting them. It's a very difficult disconnect between what you do as a local resident to protect against something you see as a danger to your children, and what you do when you're faced with the law telling you it's wrong. It's a very difficult situation.
Well, on the subject of the law, we've just heard from the Police and Crime Commissioner Clive Grunshaw, who's described the colossal drainage on police resources of policing the anti-fracking protest. A drainage, some might describe it as a waste. How would you respond to that?
Entirely agree. You know, Westminster created this situation. You know, they overturned the decision that said no to fracking here. What did they think was going to happen? That everybody who objected and all of those reasons for rejecting that planning would just disappear? Of course they won't. So all of that anger in the community and all of that rejection is still there, and so we weren't going to disappear. So the drain on our police forces is awful. The way that they're being used to help facilitate this profit-driven industry into a community that has rejected it is wrong. That is not how I see our police force being used. These people have brought this upon themselves, the rejection, and so the police are now just being used as a cushion between that industry being protected and the angry communities. So they're the cushion between.
But by the same token, the police aren't just going to disappear either. There seem to be some people in the anti-fracking movement who seem to want to just be left to it. That's just never going to happen, is it?
It's a shame that it can't be.
Well,
I think that the hardest thing is to work out, what do we do about this situation? Because this is the first of many. Because if they do this throughout the country, and if we don't succeed in stopping them here, this is going to be a common sight in towns throughout the country. So they're going to have to work out some way we're going to deal with this. Yes, it's sad that the police are having to be used in this way.
And you accept their hands are tied, do you? Accept it's not the police at fault.
I see that. Except I would add that, and I'm sure you've been very much part of this as much as I have in the last 6 months of intense work at the roadside, is there hasn't been a single instance of violence from us. We sit in inconvenient places, either in front of the gates or on top of a truck, or we slowly walk in front of vehicles. At no point do we put anyone in risk, and at no point do we use violence, and yet countless times we have had our hair pulled, we've been shoved. A protector was the other day strangled by a security man on the pavement, not within the site. And yesterday a vehicle hit one of the people in the street. Now, had it been, okay, that was a protest situation, but for a person to be walking in the road and there was no other vehicles except this one small truck, and the one small truck turned and hit him. You know, that could have been an elderly gentleman with dementia. You know, you do not aim your vehicle at protesters. You don't. That's not how it works.
From the police point of view, isn't that all part of the rough and tumble of trying to restrain public or keep public order?
But we're not rough and tumbling. We're not rough and tumbling. Yes, we're angry. Yes, we'll get vocal, but in all honesty they dealt with worse on a vocal level.
We've seen anti-fracking protesters break fences down, go on trespass onto the land only a couple of months ago.
I think you're referring to February 25th when a hole was made in a hedge that we had never seen before, and where people were encouraged to go in there and a man's dog ran in. This was not protesters making a hole and deliberately going in there. I was there for that instant, and I know that, having worked on that road every day and for the last 6 months, I know what was normal and what wasn't. And we have to accept that there are incidents where we will get caught up in and nothing to do with us. I can honestly say with my hand on my heart that I'm honoured to stand with the people I stand with, who are, for the most part, law-abiding and peaceful. But we are in a very difficult situation and we have to fight back.
As you are here today with a Reclaim the Power hat on, the towers that Reclaim the Power have built there are banners hanging from them.
It wasn't them that built them. It was, if you look at any fracking site in the country, any camp, there has been a tower at every single one. It's kind of a signature thing that one goes up, it gives you a good view. If the police cordon off an area, we can still see into it. We have drones, but that's not good enough. It's not too frequent. Those two towers, they were built by people who were there before Reclaim the Power came. I mean, Reclaim the Power's presence has helped us to organise better, that's all.
Well, I'll stand corrected on that, but somebody from those towers, whoever has built them, has hung banners which say we're witnessing unlawful police behaviour and violent assaults by police are increasing. Neither of those two statements are true, are they?
I can say with my hand on my heart that is absolutely true. Absolutely true. I was by Barbara when she was dragged by her hair by a female police officer across the pavement. There was no cause for that. I've been shoved personally when there was no cause to be shoved, when I was standing without needing to be shoved. I've watched other people be handled in ways they shouldn't be handled. So no, it absolutely has. And if you check, I'm on Facebook as Tina Louise, and I live stream almost daily. And when I live stream, another thing that they do is that I will film down the road and it is clear of all protesters, and yet the police will close it off to facilitate the movement of a vehicle, an oversized HGV that requires both lanes to turn. So a lot of that road closure has nothing to do with us. All of our activities take place beyond the cycle line at the gates or on the other side of the road.
You can't say that the police themselves aren't being subject to verbal assaults and taunting, in effect.
Yes, well, you know, They're police, and they deal with Blackpool on a Saturday night, stag nights.
Shouldn't have to.
Is
though,
there a
should they?
single? We shouldn't have to handle heavy policing. At no point has there been a single police officer harmed or hurt in any way by a protester. I mean, we need to make that clear. That's very important. Is that we are being portrayed in a way that it's just dishonest a lot of the time. You know, let's be realistic about this. We are primarily, I would say, our movement is 80% female, and certainly about that many percent newcomers to activism. We are people simply defending our children and saying we can't back down. We can't move out of the way and let a dangerous industry through because we know the facts. We've spoken to the parents all over the world who are dealing with this industry and the illnesses it brings. And so we're not going home. We're not going anywhere. The government, in particular, who created this situation by overruling local democracy, are now going to have to find their own solution.
You said you've been there since January the 5th. Just finally, how is the resolve amongst protesters?
We must have done 150 active days now. Resolve gets stronger. Like I said, it's not like this is a choice. A police officer said to me the other day, you've got a choice, you can go home. But I don't have a choice. I'm a grandmother, and if I move out of the way of what I know to be harm, then that would be me being negligent in my role and my job. So my job is to protect my grandchild, and I see and I know that this is a threat. So the resolve of everybody else at the roadside, amazing, amazing. I have seen people who came to activism for the first time on January 5th who still stand every day.
Tina, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Thank you.